Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reserve Seating. We are going to be doing a 2-week back-to-back of underrated Stephen King movies. So we start with a movie based on a book that Rob recently read, written by Stephen King, Dolores Claiborne. So I'm really interested on your take on the movie after having read the book and what differences there are. So maybe we could start there.
Yeah, so I recently read, so as you said, and I've been saying the last couple of weeks at the start of summer, I just decided I was going to start reading a bunch of Stephen King. Never really read Stephen King. Did a couple, I remember reading Carrie in college, and I read The Green Mile when that movie was coming out, but I just never really got into it, and have been incredibly just impressed. And I don't need to tell probably most of you out there that Stephen King rules. And so it's been super, super fun. And we decided to do some unseen Stephen King adaptations. Most of us, have seen most of the big ones. But Dolores Claiborne was one that I had never seen before. And I was really surprised by the book. The story itself, between the movie and the book, are relatively similar. It's sort of this small family drama that takes place on this island off the coast of Maine. There's sort of murder and domestic drama and things about childhood and femininity and what it means to be a wife and so on and so forth, and lots of interesting themes. Um, the movie, I found it really interesting. I definitely respect the movie. Don't know that I really like it nearly as much as I like the book, but mostly because it was a really good example of the difference between how a narrative can be structured in a book and how it kind of needs to be structured in a movie, especially considering the time and place the movie was made in. So Dolores
Mhm.
Claiborne, the book, for folks who have read it, that the book is not, it's a novel, but it's not broken up into chapters. The entire thing is the first person perspective of the title character as she's being interrogated about an incident that occurred. She's basically in an interrogation room, or an inquest or whatever you want to call it, for the entire story. And she just goes in and tells her story. And there's interjections from other characters, the police who are interviewing her, but it's mostly just her sitting there and telling her story. Now, obviously, Kathy Bates, who stars in the film as Dolores Claiborne, is a wonderful actor, and she could do this in her sleep. She could do a one woman show like this. But Tony Gilroy, the screenwriter, chose, I think, wisely to kind of break it up a little bit, make it a little bit more of a conventional drama, more cinematic. So you've got the Jennifer Jason Leigh character, who's the daughter, who factors in the story but is not present in the story at all. She doesn't make an appearance in the book Dolores Claiborne. Um,
Mhm.
she is arguably the co-lead of the movie, where they sort of frame it in a much different way so that you can have her functionally telling her story to somebody, but also still having a lot of those character flashbacks and things like that. So smart move. Tony Gore is a great screenwriter. I think it was really, really wise to do this. The book, um, though, is a little bit more, for me, a little bit more interesting because the character Dolores Claiborne is, she's a little bit brassier. That's what I was kind of hoping I would get this from Kathy Bates, and I unfortunately just I didn't. One of the things I didn't love about the movie was the character is a little bit more. I don't want to say, I don't want to call her morose because she's got plenty of reasons to be morose, but she's a little bit more shrinking than she is in the book. In the book, she's loud, she's brassy, and she's insecure in the way where she is pushing back a lot more on the world around her. Where the way
Mhm.
she's portrayed in the book, or the way she's portrayed in the film, it's a lot of things coming at her and her kind of shrinking away from it, which makes sense totally given the things that she goes through, which I don't want to spoil for anybody, but made I thought made her character in the book a little bit more interesting. And it's also just Stephen King's writing. The other thing I'm really, really discovering with this read through is how distinct King's voice is, and how different filmmakers have chosen to interpret that, sometimes more successfully than others. Um,
Mhm.
and then there's lots of examples of that, and we could go into that. But I thought that there's a powerful voice, in the book that fits King's other work, whereas Taylor Hackford, the director here, who is known for, like, I think, like, starchy, prestigious kind of stuff. He does real kind of prestige projects. Totally good work here, totally fine, totally, of its time, 95. This is the kind of movie you would make if you're making a prestige drama like this. This is the kind of movie that Castle Rock would put out. This is the kind of movie that a Taylor Hackford type character would make, director would make, excuse me. Um, I just found it a little, not disappointing, but just a little bit less exciting than the book. But overall, I still thought it was a really good movie. I still thought it got the major beats of the movie well. Um,
Mhm.
it creates, again, going back to this idea of um, a movie needing to be structured differently. The movie ends with the sort of courtroom theatrics. It's not quite a courtroom, but it's got the lawyers, all going back and forth and all that. That's not in the book. That it's much, it's the climax is much more emotional. It's much more sort of about revelations that the character comes to internally, which of course are hard to dramatize on screen. So again, overall, like definitely a successful and interesting adaptation of a really kind of not a unique story, but a story that presented a particular storytelling problem that I thought was made for a good movie.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting because I haven't read the book, but I this is my second time watching the movie in about a year. I hadn't seen it prior to last December. It was one of the movies that we talked about on a podcast for Friday night double features. We did like a Castle Rock double.
Yeah.
And I liked it more this time. I liked it the first time, but I liked it a little bit more even now that I kind of knew what it was like. I don't think that it's on par with Kathy Bates's other Stephen King movie, Misery, but like what is like Misery's a classic. But I think this is like a really interesting just character study and drama, and it seems on one hand very Stephen King with the specificity of the location and the characters having such kind of just being so three-dimensional. But also, yeah, I guess like there's no like, not that all of his movies do, but like any type of like supernatural element
Yeah.
or anything like that. So it's I don't want to say, I don't know his writing well enough to say that it's a departure, but it seems a lot more kind of in a lower gear than some of his other work, which I appreciate. I like a lot of the performances in here. Like Christopher Plummer is great as like an antagonist, and I read something interesting where like they wanted him to dress in like kind of dowdy suits to make it look like he's this haggard detective, and like he doesn't really care about like how his appearance is. He's just so dogged and like keeping his criminal record intact and everything. And you put him in a suit and he looked like Christopher Plummer in a suit,
Yeah.
and they couldn't make him look dowdy enough. And he's like, well, let me break my nose. And he took like some kind of like an eyebrow pencil and like drew like a broken nose onto his
Nice.
face. And like Taylor Hackford's like, well, that's why you're Christopher Plummer. You can solve problems like this. So I really like that anecdote. I think Kathy Bates is one of my favorite actors. So just seeing her like have something this, and I don't mean this in like a negative way, like, but this theatrical, like,
Yeah.
because she's from the stage, like she,
Right.
is a film actress, but she also like has a long career on the stage and plays like Frankie and Johnny and things like that. And it gives her like an entire canvas in which to paint on. So that's exciting for me. I'm uh, I don't know how much, and maybe this kind of bears out because of the her character being more minor in the book.
Mhm.
But Jennifer Jason Leigh's performance, I wish they gave her more notes to
Yeah.
play because it's a long movie and we're kind of at one pitch for a
She's
really long
playing
time.
she's playing like 90s working girl,
Yeah.
and there's not really much else.
Yeah, and it's just like she's just agitated
Yeah.
by everything. So it's kind of, and I get it because like this situation is something she's just trying to repress
Yeah.
and whatnot. So maybe it's like her character indicating things that like, before they actually come out to the forefront, or hiding things. But yeah, I mean like it's always like tough to say because like but like a performance like David Strathairn in this movie is pretty incredible. He's playing like a beyond the pale piece of shit, but
Mhm.
if you feel that way, then he's doing the job right. So it's like it's a great performance. So I mean, like that's kind of what I take away from it is just like it's a real actor showcase, and then I like just being in the milieu of
Mhm.
Maine, and not and especially Stephen King Maine. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this. Like, this is something that I'm sure people have had time to catch up on in the 28 years since it's been out. But also, like, if you're kind of dabbling through the Stephen King filmography, maybe not. Maybe this is one that kind of didn't jump out at you yet because it doesn't pop up on like the top horror lists or anything like that. So yeah, I'm glad that you finally got to see it. I'm glad to hear like the perspective of somebody who read the book
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody who kind of just went into it cold like me with the movie.
Yeah, and again, like good, like I did like a lot of what they did with the character that gave Kathy Bates some room, but the one thing I will say, the Vera character, that's sort of the debutante that she works for,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot more of her in the book, and the relationship between the two of them is a lot more fleshed out. That was one thing that I was kind of taken aback by, or a little bit disappointed by the movie, which was, I think, so much of Dolores Claiborne's actions feed from that relationship and the way that relationship changes over the course of her time working for her, which I think feeds a lot into the feminist themes of the book, and that I thought were kind of lost in the movie. Um,
Mm.
but again, like you said, for the most part, it's still a really solid adaptation, and a good, as I said before, a good like lesson in how do you practically and conventionally deliver a story like this for major film audiences, especially in 94, 95 when the movie was made. So I think it's overall, like you said, it's a minor King adaptation, but I think it's a successful one.
I
So
have
I'm
a weird
a lot of
thing
fun.
with King movies that I don't want to watch them like on anything higher quality than a DVD because I want them to look as much like a musty old book as
Yeah,
possible.
they should. They
So
definitely.
like I like when I get like a Paramount 4 pack where it's like Dead Zone, Graveyard Shifts, like stuff like that, or Pet Cemetery. I'm just like, yeah, this is gonna look like a book. Like, it's not gonna look like too high def for
If they're
me.
like non-anamorphic DVDs or something like that,
Perfect.
just like,
Yeah,
hey,
I watched Dolores Claiborne this way. It was like on a 4 movie Warner Brothers 4 film
nice.
favorite, and it was like we're really letting you know this is anamorphic widescreen
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you. We're gonna be we originally were gonna do 2 movies this week, but we decided to split it up.
Mhm.
So next week we're gonna talk about Firestarter, no, not Dwight H. Little. What am I doing? Mark Lester's Firestarter. Mea culpa, Patrick Bromley. Um, so I'm excited to finally see that. And until next time.
Until next time, Stephen King rules.
He sure does. We bid you adieu.
Good day, sir. Or
Good
madam,
day, good madams and good
good
sirs.
sirs, and everybody in between. Read Stephen King.